And I want to welcome everyone to the Work to Include Employment First for Transitioning Youth webinar, and thank our panelists, Jonathan Krasik, Don McGrath, Christina Skye, and Riley, for joining us today to give us their perspectives on transition. I wanted to let you all know that we are recording this and that it will be archived on the Work to Include site. So for those participants who weren't able to make it today, it will be available in the next couple of weeks. So just please look for that and share it with those people you'd like to see it who weren't able to be here today. We will be using the Q&A for questions. We will have time for questions at the end, so please enter them. I will be monitoring those, and just want to make sure that you can get your questions in real time, and we'll go back and get as many answered as we can. If we don't get them all answered, we'll certainly make an attempt to get the answers out to you, so please feel free. Also wanted to let you know that we will be sending these slides out to you after the event, and we have an evaluation form that we'd like you to fill out that'll come to you via email. If you're using closed caption, please note that there's a closed caption option on the toolbar. Please click on that, and you can either use closed caption or also view the transcript, the complete transcript. So did I miss anything, Jonathan?
Did you want to go over this slide here? I do. And then, well, I'll take it away.
And then I'll turn it over to the master. I just wanted to make sure everybody knows that this webinar is sponsored by Work to Include. This coalition has been around for the last 4 years. And what we've been doing is enlisting people with disabilities, families, and advocates to promote competitive integrated employment across the state of Indiana. We were born out of an initiative that really worked with the Indiana Governor's Council for People with Disabilities to raise the voice of individuals with disabilities where it comes to employment first and how competitive integrated employment should be supported in our state. Our 3 main goals are to eliminate barriers and design a system that works for all. So we work at the systems level to make change. We work at the local level. We have team leaders across the state that are working to improve employment outcomes locally. And then finally, we want to document the success of people with disabilities. Our partners are the Governor's Council, NAPSI, and INSILC.
All right, ready to go?
Ready to go.
Okay, good afternoon. Happy Thursday, almost Friday. I'm Jonathan Krasik. I'm the Director of Youth Services with Vocational Rehabilitation. And the first part of this webinar is a Pre-ETS 101, and then we'll hear from Dr. McGrath with the parent's perspective. And then we'll hear from Riley Zweibel. Riley, you're going to correct me when you come on, and hopefully I pronounced your last name correctly, who will give her perspective from her work at Toyota down south. So if you're familiar with Pre-ETS, this may be a little bit of a repeat for you, but hopefully it'll help to clarify some things or give you some new information. If you're not familiar with Pre-ETS, then this should give you kind of a good foundation of knowledge. It's just the basics 101. So how did Pre-ETS, or Pre-Employment Transition Services, sorry, that's what Pre-ETS stands for, come about? That was due to WIOA, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. That was a law that was signed in July of 2014 by then President Obama, replaced a previous law called the Workforce Investment Act. And the overall emphasis in the act was on competitive, or the law, competitive integrated employment. WIO kind of did a lot of different things, but one of the major things that it did for VR was really expanded what we are kind of required to do and the services that we are allowed to and required to provide. So what it did was created pre-employment transition services, and there's 5 focus areas that I'll get into in a second, and that's for eligible and potentially eligible students with disabilities. So it could be students who are already part of vocational rehabilitation, they've gone through our eligibility process, or those students who are considered potentially eligible. And I'll define that a little better here also in a second. So we are required to set aside 15% of federal VR program funds each year for pre-ETs and only pre-ETs. So that adds up to about $9 to $10 million. And what that means is that we get about 80% federal funding and 20% state funding. It's not exactly that. So of that 80% that comes from the federal government, 15% of that has to be spent on pre-employment transition services. So that's a pretty big number for these services. So potentially eligible is defined as students who are receiving services under an IEP or a 504 plan, or basically any other student who has some type of disability. They're considered potentially eligible because we can show that they have some type of disability, and they may in the future be eligible for vocational rehabilitation. But that's really all we need for somebody to be enrolled in pre-employment transition services, is to show an IEP or 504 or some other documentation of disability. So as the name implies, if you look at the final bullet point there, potentially eligible students will not have applied and been found eligible for VR. So they don't necessarily have to go through the usual sort of VR process. These are the 5 services that we are required to make available to, that's kind of the federal language, make available to students with disabilities throughout the state. And they are job exploration counseling, work-based learning experiences, excuse me, counseling on opportunities for enrollment in post-secondary education, workplace readiness, and instruction and self-advocacy. And they're fairly self-explanatory, as you might guess. You know, and there's some examples here. Job exploration can be looking at interest surveys, reviewing career websites, identifying career pathways. Work-based learning experiences, paid or non-paid work experiences, volunteer work, job shadows, internships, that kind of thing. Counseling on opportunities for post-secondary education, could be counseling on post-secondary training, what's available, what might work for any particular student, counseling to support a smooth transition from high school to post-secondary education. Workplace readiness is kind of those soft skills, like soft skills training, employability skills training, but it can also include independent living skills training. So, you know, how to make dinner, how to do the laundry, that kind of stuff. It's a little bit of a catch-all category, although there are some things that we can't do under workplace readiness, but a lot of stuff fits in that particular category. And then instruction and self-advocacy, which could be instruction and self-awareness, disability disclosure, when it might be a good time to do that, requesting accommodations, self-determination, that kind of thing. So those are the 5 activities, and these are just some examples of things that we can do underneath each one of those areas. So students and youth with disabilities, they're slightly different. So students are considered individuals with a disability who are in secondary, so basically high school or post-secondary education, or maybe have moved on from high school to college or vocational training or some sort of post-secondary program. And they need to be from age 14 to age 22. So you would qualify starting at age 14 and through age 22. So basically up to your 23rd birthday, as long as you're still considered a student. So you're enrolled in a program. Youth with disabilities are individuals with a disability who are 14 through age 24, who may or may not be attending a secondary or post-secondary educational institution. So as I said, only students with disabilities are eligible for pre-ETs. So 14 through age 22 and enrolled in a secondary or post-secondary program. If you are a youth with a disability who is not considered a student, it may be more appropriate to refer you for a more traditional vocational rehabilitation services. So let's see, pre-ETs contracts. So the way that Indiana Vocational Rehabilitation decided to kind of roll this out is to we have contracts throughout the state for pre-ETs or pre-employment transitions. And so there's 12 contractors, And each of those contractors, sort of the main contract holders, work with other providers throughout the state. So they have sort of subcontracts, if you will, with each of these other providers. That allows us to cover all 92 counties and over 400 schools at this point. And we're constantly trying to expand to reach sort of more and more schools and more students. Two of those vendors do things just a little bit differently than our regular vendors, and those are Hands in Autism and InSource. And we're going to hear from InSource here in a minute. And they provide more specialized services that align with pre-eds. So they're an important part of the whole mix, but theirs is a little different in that they don't necessarily have a comprehensive program within any one particular school system, but they still provide very, very valuable services. So right here is a link to a couple of documents that will be helpful to you. So when you receive this, you might click on that, and that'll help you keep up to date on information with pre-eds. And I'll describe what those are here in the next couple of slides. So the first handout that you can look at when you click on that link in the previous slide is called our Pre-EDS Basics handout. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's kind of everything I'm telling you now in one handy dandy form, couple of pages. So the first side will give you all the information I just kind of said. It talks about WIOA, it talks about each of the different required activities. And then side 2 of that form will tell you each of the counties that pre-EDS is in, so all 92, obviously, but then it will also tell you who the provider is in each of those counties and contact information for each of those providers. So if you're interested in finding out where pre-EDS is in your particular county and who's assisting with that, that's the form to look at. If you need more detailed information than that, this is sort of a multi-page document called our County Schools Providers document. And basically it lists out each of the providers, the counties they work in, contact information, but it also lists specific schools that each of those providers is responsible for. So this gives a little more detailed information, and it's, I don't remember how many pages, but it's multiple pages. So this is helpful if you're wanting to see if pre-EDS is in your particular school system in the county in which you live or your student goes to. If a school isn't listed in your particular county, it may mean that we just haven't reached that school yet. But don't despair. If you will contact me, and my contact information is at the end of this, I can work on seeing what we can do to help provide pre-EDS to your students if your student is in a school that is not yet covered. But we have over 400 schools covered, so we're in pretty good shape, but we haven't gotten all of the schools covered at this point. But let me know, and we can usually work something out with that. So let's see, VR youth counselors. This is a fairly new position. And our youth counselors, we have 7 throughout the state, hoping to hire 2 more. I had one who moved on to a different position within VR. So her position is posted and another new position is posted. I'm hoping to get 9 youth counselors throughout the state. And they're sort of our, for lack of a better term, they're sort of our boots on the ground. Because initially it was me and the associate director, Will Coltrion, kind of working on this and trying to cover everything throughout the state. So we greatly count on our youth counselors. And Christy Ski is on here too. She's working with Riley. And so she's one of our esteemed youth counselors. And these are some of the activities and some of the duties that they're responsible for, including Christy, who's on with us today. So they assist providers with plans for pre-EDS activities. So they help contact businesses, community organizations, and just basically assist with that with our providers. They help to monitor the results. So they review what's in our pre-EDS web portal, where kind of our case management system, make sure everything's being done correctly. They work with local schools and their transition teams to help with like referrals from the school to the pre-EDS provider or the school to the local VR area office. Again, I kind of said that already. Community outreach with local employers, training and technical assistance, direct services to students. They can actually do that in certain cases, provide direct pre-EDS services, although mainly it's our providers who do that. Act as liaisons for local VR offices, and initiate and facilitate plans for growth. So they've all done needs assessments that they're constantly sort of building on in their particular catchment areas to keep improving what we've got going on in terms of pre-employment transition services and transition services in general. They do great work, and I'm proud of them, and I'm so glad that they're on board. So thank you, Christy. So working with schools. So how did this work at kind of the local level? So as I said, our contractors are assigned specific counties, and within those counties, specific school systems. So the contractors work with the schools, the school staff, on determining which students they will refer for pre-employment transition services. And that's based on what I call our pre-ETS mantra, which is supplement what the school is doing, but don't supplant what the school is doing. So in other words, if a school is already providing services that are kind of similar to pre-ETS for a specific population, then maybe the school wants to focus on another population within the school that isn't getting those particular services. Or maybe the school excels in certain services that are similar to pre-ETS, but maybe they need to strengthen up some other services that might be available. So they might assist with those other services. So for instance, maybe they have really good work-based learning experiences programs set up, but maybe they need to kind of strengthen their workplace readiness skills. So based on the needs of the school, they kind of determine which population of students to focus on and which services to focus on. But that said, we have to make sure that all of those services are available to any given student if that's what's needed. Let's see, so how do you enroll a student in pre-ETS? So most providers have worked out, well, all of them really have worked out a referral system with the school. So they kind of identify which students they think would benefit most from pre-ETS based on what's already going on in the school system, and they send the referrals directly to the provider. If you have a student you believe would benefit from pre-ETS and is not yet enrolled, that's okay. We don't have to, not all referrals have to come directly from the school system. So I would talk to your school personnel or your school staff about making a referral to whoever that local provider is. If you need help with that, contact the provider directly, and you can use either one of those forms that I mentioned earlier, or use the pre-ETS email at the end of this presentation. So there's a FSSA pre-ETS email that you can send to, and I monitor that and I can help, with that referral. Or if you know who your local youth counselor is, they can assist you with that too. So what happens is when the school sends the referral information over, that includes a release of information and disability documentation. So a copy of the IEP, a copy of the 504 plan, of course, with permission from the parents or guardians included in that. But that's all we need to get started. That's it. Basically a release different areas, and they'll help kind of figure out what makes the most sense for that student, what that student needs in general. Let's see, the provider, and I kind of emphasized this earlier, can't work with a student until they have the release and disability documentation. So that's how to get enrolled, any student enrolled in pre-ETS. Here's the contact information. And again, Susie said she would send all this out. So don't worry about trying to copy this down right away, but it's me, Will, the associate director, and then our general pre-ETS mailbox. You can use any of those if you need help with pretty much anything transition or pre-ETS related, and we will work with you on that, and we will assist you in any way that we can. So Susie, are we taking questions now? We're going to wait till the very end because that's the end of my section.
Well, we have one question for you,
okay.
Jonathan, from Bonnie Bomer.
Hi, Bonnie.
Do youth counselors also work with students in college?
Yes, they can, and that's a good question. We have specific post-secondary counselors, and we're kind of getting that position sort of up and running and getting those people trained. It's very new. So in general, those counselors would do that. But if it's pre-ETS related, and they need assistance in pre-employment transition services and they happen to be in college, then our youth counselors would be the main ones for that, if that makes sense. So transition or pre-ETS related, probably our youth counselors would work with that, but anything else sort of college related is, I can't remember their exact title, but our like post-secondary counselors, I think is the title. So hopefully that helps and that makes sense. Let me know if you need more information about that. Or Bonnie, you've got my number. You can get in touch with me if you need anything. Anything else in the Q&A before we turn it over?
That's all I have right now, Jonathan.
Right. Well, obviously I'll be here for the duration, so let me know. Okay, so next we have Dr. Dawn McGrath, the Executive Director of InSource with the Parent's Perspective. I'm going to stop sharing and then Dawn, you can take over here.
Thank you, Jonathan.
You are welcome. I'm
So,
gonna mute myself.
yeah, so I'm the executive director of InSource, and you heard Jonathan say that we do provide, we're a statewide pre-ETS provider for some of those limited purposes that he said. And my husband and I raised two sons. The oldest is a son with disability. And so I was asked to share a parent's perspective on the transition. Now, some of you might recognize our name because my poor son has been an open book for trainings that I've done all through the years. For 10 years at the DOE, when we were passing out instructions on how to do the new IEP, it was his IEP that you all received. And if you've seen videos of, like how to have a case conference, he was the kid in there that was acting as the student at the case conference. So it might be, this might be a nice follow-up, like, how's this kid doing, right? So here's my son's senior photo. And the one thing that I want to emphasize, if you don't get anything else from the next 10 minutes as I open the book again on my son, is that sometimes when we think of transition, we think of it as a single moment of moving into adulthood, maybe like a Hail Mary pass from the high school to the unknown. And I just want to emphasize, it is not a moment. It is not this senior picture. There is so much more that goes into it. Often, I've been asked, well, when do you start thinking about transition? And, truthfully, my thinking is that you have to start by building a vision of self, that the child has to have an opportunity to build that. Now, here's another example of where Chris was put up to the task of being a part of a campaign. And so I heard this was on a bulletin board somewhere in the south side of Indy, but I don't think I ever saw it. But the point of this was, that people with disabilities go to college. That was the purpose of that campaign. And I think that when you have a student that doesn't have a vision for themselves, they're really at the greatest risk. So the transition services that a parent should think about, that a student should think about, and that provider should think about is one that helps to develop that vision. Sometimes we'll ask students, what do you want to be when you grow up? And, that's really not a fair question because it means nothing without exposure to options. I think our son went to college because he was fourth generation of going to college. My grandma went to college, so he didn't know anything else. And that might not have been the best plan for him, but he did it because that's what everybody did. And you see that a lot in families that the children see what their parents do, and so they can develop that vision for themselves, and that becomes their self-identity. So that's a real important focus. So when should transition start? Well, I really believe it should start at the earliest age. So this is his kindergarten photo. And I had him sitting at my husband and I had him sitting at every case conference meeting. So this would have been his third case conference meeting for this year, ever since he was a toddler. And at first it was kind of meaningless, but he began to develop this idea that he was going to have to be responsible. He had to explain his strengths and his limitations and the choices, and develop that self-awareness from being very little. I remember one time we were leaving, he was late. He wasn't much older than this picture. And we're like, come on, Chris, come on, we're going to be late for church. And he said very calmly, my IEP says I have extended time. He said, yeah, so that doesn't work here, So this is but a part of understanding who he is very much a part of transition. So I really think as a parent that transition never starts and it never ends. It just is. It is a condition of the process of being alive. I also want to emphasize too, as we thought about his transition plan, the TIEP, the P doesn't stand for plan. It stands for program. And that's something that we always want to emphasize with parents, understanding that this is an individualized program that's supposed to be designed around what the student is going to become. And we advocated for a strength-based approach. So for example, Chris had some artistic skills, and the school was going through a process of saying, well, he is struggling with math, so we're going to give him 2 classes of math. And we didn't want to deny him access to the things that were his strengths. And we stood up for that. So that strength-based approach, I think, is really essential when planning for transition. Additionally, planning for the whole person. So including the support of those around them, especially their peers. And I have a few stories to share about that. When he was probably in 5th grade, we had a pizza party where we invited the kids from his class, and we passed out video cameras, and their assignment was to record videos for Chris that showed him how to do certain social skills, how to approach a friend, how to, if you forgot something, how to handle your frustration. And they made these little videos for him. And they were precious, but it also made it so that the peers became a part of the support system. I remember one time standing outside of the locker room when Chris was done with one of these cross-country events. And sometimes when he was frustrated, he would kind of honk and hit his legs. And I heard him in there doing that sound. And I heard a kid make fun of him and, kind of repeat the sound and say, what the heck's wrong with him? Then I heard another student say, why would you say anything like that? What's wrong with you? And just be really supportive and say, not everybody is like you are, and kind of defend them. And, that was really neat to hear that the peers were a part of the solution as well. Another example, team photo. Chris wasn't there. There was one of the players that said, wait, we have to find Chris. That feeling of being a part, belonging. I was in the hallway one time and I saw him, just having a hard time with the stuff in his locker. And I saw another student come up and say, here, Chris, let me help you get organized. Those kinds of things, like just thinking of that whole person and how they're going to fit into the larger community. And then also working with the larger community so that they understand and support your student through this process. Did that just only go one? Yeah, okay. The other thing is that the reminder that the transition IEP should be written to support those post-secondary outcomes. And sometimes that's an afterthought or an add-on, what is it that you're going to be when you grow up, instead of saying, all right, here is our intention, here is our vision, and then everything else aligns to it. And that's a transition we all have to make ourselves as being authors of these plans. So while in high school, Christopher served as an assistant in a life skills program, kind of during one of his periods. He also went to Hands in Autism. Naomi has been a good friend to us for many years. He got on a bus in Pike Township, learned how to ride that bus down to IU down in Indy. And he was one of the first ones to go through her program where she taught young individuals how to follow procedures at a work environment. And he really benefited from that. And we also tied in the Medicaid waiver services. So there was always someone there to take him places, to help him think about social experiences and plan for his recreation and other needs. And then when he transitioned to college, again, he continued volunteering in a life skills program. So he went to a local middle school, really enjoyed that. And I was really surprised with the amount of support that the colleges provided. Chris went to ISU and then he went to IU Kokomo. And in both cases, they had an academic assistance center that was just so accommodating and so helpful, looked out for him, taught him self-independence. And, even though you sit at those case conference meetings, in the secondary program, and they say, you're not going to have these protections once you're through, with the Article 7 age, universities do step up sometimes and really do provide that support. It meant a lot to us. And then again, the Medicaid waiver services were a big part of that, and they continue even today. And so, even though we have this moment here where he got his bachelor's, it was 7 years. It was very hard. And I don't know, when I look back and think, what might we have done differently during this whole transition time? I think we might have considered more seriously if college would be right. I mean, I guess now that he's through it, it's nice to have in the pocket. But right now he is working at Lowe's. And I have to say, Lowe's has been just a wonderful business to work for. They have intentional policies of accommodating and supporting. They've been really, really helpful for Chris. He started out working in a middle school as an assistant, which, he could be hired for since he had that degree, but it was hard for him. He loved that work. He'd really like to go back to that work, but it was a classroom of 21 very needy children and, only a couple staff people, and the anxiety was too hard for him. I think we might have spent more time on intentional social skill development. although I'm not exactly sure how we would do that. You know, again, that's an example where there's some Hail Mary that goes on of just, you know, like putting a student in a social environment and hoping that they'll learn. I think we probably could be more intentional about that. I mean, it's kind of sad to see. I mean, sometimes now he's lonely, and that would have been that connection didn't really continue after high school that we had worked on, you know. And so those lingering hopes that he has for something more, that it just continues, and it's just a part of this idea that transition really never ends. You know, you come from one event, one moment to another. But the support is something that is on both ends of all of those moments. So that's really our story. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thanks, Dawn. Next up, we have Riley, but real quickly, well, first of all, any questions for Dr. McGrath before we move on to Riley, because we've got a little bit of time. Do we see anything in the Q&A? And then I know there was another question for me also. So while we're looking at that, I think, Bonnie, you had another question about self-employment. And yes, that's something we can explore definitely through our, like what I call our traditional VR services with a traditional VR counselor, but also if a student is interested in that, and that comes up during pre-ETS at any point, then the career coach, that's usually what our providers call the individuals who work with students in the schools, can explore those options for whatever, you know, self-employment in general, and then maybe whatever particular vocational goal that they're looking at. So that's, yes, that's something that we can also do. So if there aren't any other questions at this point, let me share my screen again. Let me see, where's the
We just had one thank you from Teresa for Dawn sharing her story.
Okay. And then hang on, I've got, looks like it just starts it all over again. Hold on a second. Slideshow from current slide. Okay, look at that, I did it. Okay. There we go. So now we have Riley. It's Zebel, I guess. I'm sorry, Riley. I'm glad we're having you on now so you can correct me, because I'm sure I'm just butchering your name. But I'm excited to hear from you. Riley works at Toyota and is from Princeton, Indiana. So if you want to jump in, and I will mute myself.
Okay, you can start whenever.
Just say hi. I'm Riley.
Ask if they can hear you.
We
Hi,
can
I'm
hear you. And Riley, we have a couple of slides too, or at least one slide, I think, that we wanted to. Here we are. And then there we go. I'll mute myself again. And Riley, you are on, and we can hear you.
All right. Like I said, I'm Riley. I work in Toyota at Toyota. I was in foster care for 4 years. Then my foster family adopted me when I was 13 years old. And then I have joined the PREETS program through the ARC of Southern West Indiana, my freshman year of high school at Princeton Community High School. We worked on careers, advocacy, and during the summer, I volunteered at Lyle Station, a historical school and museum where we planted flowers in the gardens and vegetables. We would pick the vegetables and sell at the vegetable stands. We also helped the students on tour. I also volunteered at the azalea path where I would help planting new plants, creating new gardens, and help set up for weddings and help get tours of the gardens. While volunteering, I was able to build close relationships with both owners of Lyle Station and the Azalea Path. So much so on my time off, I would like to go out and volunteer and see them. In 2020, I went through the I can't even do it. Inclusive Talent Apprenticeship program for 12 weeks. And after I completed the 12-week program, I was offered a full-time position at Toyota in Body Weld. Now that I have a full-time job, I have been able to get my own apartment, implant the living skills that I have learned through my time with the ARC of Southern West Indiana. One of the current things I enjoy doing now is encouraging the new apprentices coming into the program. That's all.
Thanks so much, Riley. That was great. We appreciate you. I think you're at Toyota right now. Is that right?
Yeah.
So we appreciate you taking time to do this for us because it's really important for people to hear your story. So who got you interested in Toyota? Who kind of first got you started there to where you were like, oh, I never thought about that necessarily. Who was that?
Stephanie Brown.
And where does Stephanie work? Where's she from?
The ARC.
Oh, okay.
The ARC.
Cool. That's great. And these pictures here, can you tell us can you see those on your screen?
Yeah.
I'm not sure where you are. Can you tell us what those are? Like the one that says think quality?
The quality is like I caught splits and like the center floor panels, and I got it like twice, and I got that.
Cool.
Pretty cool.
And then what's this Start Your Impossible? What's that all about?
Transitioning from the 12 weeks onto Toyota track.
Oh, so it says June 2021 winner.
Yes.
So that's pretty impressive. And you were the winner for doing that the best, or what does that mean exactly?
Finding the crack in the body weld.
Oh, okay. So you caught something that maybe other people hadn't caught, and you said something about it. Yeah. So it sounds like you're a pretty valuable employee there at Toyota. Yeah. Cool. Great. Thank you. Does anybody else have questions? I see there's some stuff popping up in the Q&A. So Riley, can you hang on for a little bit and see if people have some questions for you, or any of us really, I guess?
Yeah.
I don't know if Susie, if you want to moderate that, or.
Can you see those questions? You want to go
Oh,
ahead,
hang on.
Jonathan?
Let me click on it. All right. Let me see I just don't want to miss anything here. So Ella Boyd says, excellent story. Awesome job, Riley. Teresa Halter asks, how often do you see others in the Inclusive Talent Apprenticeship now that you work full time?
I pretty much see them every day at my lunch.
Every day at lunch. Okay, cool. And then people are saying, great points, Dawn, and thank you for sharing your story. Any other questions for any of us, any of your panelists today? Excuse me. I've got it open here. So Gloria Triplet says, amazing job, Riley. So cool. I think that's all we've got so far.
So Jan, I saw you had a raised hand. Did you want to put a question in the
Oh, I didn't
Q&A?
see that. Sorry.
There's also a question in there, Jonathan, that asks
yes.
Riley, what are her job tasks?
Oh, so what are your job tasks? Thank you. I had gone away.
I do center floor and you are lateral. It's back in the back. It's basically putting parts together on like the bottom of the car.
Okay. And you said somebody had their hand raised, but I can't see that.
No, I was
finger slip.
asking.
Sorry, Jan. Yeah.
Oh.
I've done that where I'm and people are calling on me. I'm like, no, I didn't. No, I'm trying to hide in the back of the class. Don't call on me. I still do that.
So I think we're good, Jonathan.
All right, let me see here. That's our final slide. If you want to take over here, then Susie, if nobody's got anything else.
I would love, Ray Montgomery has joined us. Ray is a regional coordinator for Work to Include. And so Ray, if you want to just do some closing comments, that would be lovely.
The screen.
First, I want to apologize for not being able to get into the meeting right on time. I don't know what was going on with my Zoom, but definitely want to thank Jonathan for helping out and leading the presentation, Susan as well. And I actually want to thank Don and Riley for everything you guys have done. And thank you guys for participating in the webinar. If you guys want to learn more about Work to Include, please visit us on the web at worktoinclude.org. And follow up for more information. We have a couple more webinars coming up. Assistive technology webinar coming up next month, so be on the lookout for that one. Talking about assistive technology in the workplace. So that'll be a great webinar as well. So just be on the lookout. We have a few other things coming up, and actually the summit coming up on March the 8th. So if you haven't registered for the summit on the 8th, we're looking forward for that one as well. So, and that's all I got, Susan.
Well, and if anybody wants to be on our mailing list, all you need to do is go to worktoinclude.org and scroll to the button that says join us on the mailing list, and you'll get our newsletter and announcements about all of our webinars like this. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
If we have time, another question popped up from, excuse me, Teresa Halter. Riley, are you still there? Because Teresa's asking, the apprenticeship sounds great. Did you enjoy it?
Yes, I did.
Okay. What was your favorite part of the apprenticeship? Hard to say.
Probably meeting all the new people.
Yeah. All your coworkers there at Toyota?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Thank you. Sorry, thought we could slip one more in. So thanks,
Well,
Teresa.
and we have a resource here that Holly put in about the family employment awareness training, which is great, by the way. It's training for families so that they're more aware of what services and supports are available around employment. So there's a link there. If everybody wants to grab onto that.
Sounds good. And thanks, Bonnie. Hopefully I'll see you at in APSI in a couple of weeks.
Yes,
Indiana APSI.
the presentation will come out. We'll send the slides out to everybody after today. And so you should look for it in the next day.
Great. Thanks, everyone. I think we're good to go. Have a great Thursday evening and weekend. And thanks, Christy and Riley. I'm going to say bye.
Thank you, Jana. Thank you for, oh, that's so nice. Thank you.